Hello everyone, Tom 10 here. When you are creating social media designs, you must fit text into the different boundaries, different comp widths, etc. And this can be pretty much tedious job to do manually because you just need to do something which can be actually automated. In this video, I'll show you how I do this for the bar chart trace animation intros and all the other titles. This is definitely not something which should you use specifically for bar chart trace animation. You can adapt that technique for anything else, and I would strongly recommend you doing something similar to that whenever you need it. With that said, let's jump ahead. Straight to the point. We have phrase here which move to the next line. We have everything else which adapts the length and the height of previous text, and how to do that. Original project looks like this. Since this headline is pretty much short, you don't see any difference here. So let's just undo and see it from the first row. This is the phrase. Let's just copy that phrase, go back into the headline. We will see how it would look like. We are going here, we are pasting that phrase, and you can see that in this original case, we have text moving into two lines, and this is updated. We have phrase here, which you should keep in mind how it looks like. And now I will just execute the script, which will build exactly the same design, but it will do it in portrait version, and you will see the difference as previously shown. So the idea is that we have a phrase which can be varying length, and we are fitting that phrase into multiple lines without actually going outside the boundaries of the composition, and whatever length it is, it will adapt, as well as the phrase afterwards will follow it as well. As mentioned, this has no direct relation to the actual bar chart trace animation. I'm just showcasing how the text can be automatically repositioned and taken into account. You can see here that we have a bit of different case where we are adding everything into portrait mode, and I will cover ratios and different composition sizes in next video. But for now, let's just focus on the sizing of the text. So we can go into the phrase itself. It's a second of the intro, and you can see that we have 3 lines here confirmed by cases by countries. You can see that we want to is already dismissed because this execution, the way it's created, accepts only 3 lines of text, and that was purposefully created. But you can see that the text adapts automatically based on some logic and the length of the line. Probably you've guessed it, or at least a question occurred: how then this happens in the landscape version? Why in the landscape version that phrase remains longer than it happens to be in the portrait version? So this is example how it would look like. Let's just copy that phrase, rerun the script, so we will build again the portrait version, and you will see how the difference happens. And there are no magic. That's just a template which I created in the past, and that template is modified by a script in order to fit in the phrase of a different length. So let's just go back into the composition and just add that phrase here. You can see that it moved into 3 lines rather than being stuck into 1. And the reason why this works is because I have created a template called Boxer, which is available on Video Hive. It was created 3 years ago, and I'm going to release an update at some point next year. But the idea is that we have text which is being pushed into the next line as long as it reaches some characters per line value. And you can see that if we make it 10, it would allow even less amount of phrases. But you can see that this execution, due to computation improvements, was reduced to 3 lines because it was enough to fit the text. But idea is that if we change it to 50, you can see that the phrase fit in just scales down because it won't fit inside the sizing of this composition. And if we want to extend it even further maximum scale, we can change it to 100, and you can see that it extends outside because there was some additional padding applied here, but initially if we try to place this text inside the composition boundaries, it would fit in perfectly. So the reason why 80 was set is to make sure that the text will always fit in here. Now, how everything works, we have lines as we need to in order to adapt our text, as well as we have those lines of shapes which goes underneath. After some expressions and calculation, this is being adapted to fit that content. And the reason why it works automatically when script is executed is because that characters per line value is affected based on the ratio of the comp. So if the ratio is huge enough, let's say it might be 45 or 40, whatever. So basically, when ratio is huge, we adapt a longer characters per line value. But if it becomes less, we just trim it down, and that way it moves to the next line and it works. Definitely, you can do anytime this by hand, and if you prefer that way, that's nothing bad about it. But I believe that whatever can be intelligently created automatically, why bother then? So that's how this works, and you can see that this also adapts. In order to achieve that, this is, so that requires quite calculation, because you need to take into account all the layers which are inside the composition which you are referring to. So in this case, you can see how this expression looks like, and you can adapt that to your purposes as well. So basically what we are trying to do here is to make sure that we take into account the position ratio of this layer when we are calculating all the layer height in this composition. So we are making sure that we take into account all the height which reflects that text, and we are just adding some padding, and that's it. Whenever we change it to even shorter text, it will adapt. And the same is being done for this text, is because if we have bigger composition width, then we definitely can fit more text in one line and allowing more room space for those design elements to animate. Previously, I have shown this in the landscape, and this is portrait. I can just briefly cover how that was achieved as well, because it also relates to the actual showcase of the text. Here we have video settings file, which I created in the past. And let's just adjust it to the normal landscape version and rerun the script. So remember, I just added this button, in case if you haven't seen previous videos, in the toolbar in order to have easy access to the script which builds all the design. But in general, this script is just single JavaScript file, extend script file, sorry. Yeah, you can see that this adapts. If I create it in a different composition size, let's say something not very much out of this world, let's just increase it to something a lot bigger. I'm not even sure how it will look like. But in general, that's an idea that whenever ratio is bigger than something, you're just adjusting it, characters per line readjust automatically, design readjust automatically. And the reason why this is important is because you can see that now everything's fitted in one line, just because we have even bigger composition ratio. And this extends even further. If you want to know more about how this is being achieved, I will cover that in an upcoming video. With that said, hopefully that intro text's explanation, in general, the logic of splitting phrases into different chunks and moving them to new layers will make sense to you. If you want to know more about that, you can just go into the video hive and check the Boxer template. It has some description items which explain the whole logic of working in the process. You can just have a look around. Also, there is a video which I cover that topic in detail in my channel. I will leave notes in the description. Other than that, I'm going to cover a few other topics which I mentioned today in upcoming videos. So let's keep in touch. Thanks for the time, and I hope to see you around.